Welcome, everyone, to this first session of the Confronting Our Freedom book club. I am so excited, and we'll do a round of introductions in just a moment. I'm Ingrid Edstrom. I'm here with co-host Ed Kless, and we're going to start us off like we like to start all of the conversations in the Accounting Alchemy Network with a really, really brief grounding. And given that we have such juicy stuff to talk about today, I want to just invite everyone to take a moment to close your eyes or lower your gaze if that feels really good to you. And just take some nice deep breaths together, in through the nose and let it out in a sigh. And on this next breath, maybe sending a little bit of air to any area of our bodies that need a little extra love and attention. And releasing any stress or tension down into the ground beneath us. And on this last breath, just allowing ourselves to be fully present in this place and time, in our bodies in this present moment. Releasing anything that came before this meeting, any thoughts about the future of what's coming after this meeting, so that we can bring our attention fully to the topic today and to each other. And when we're ready, come on back together. And I would love it if we can do a brief round of introductions. And I just put a prompt in the chat, name, location, and how you're feeling in this moment. And I would love it if maybe, Ed, you would kick us off and then pass to someone.
Sure. Ed Kless, just north of Dallas, Texas. And I am exhilarated by this conversation because I'm looking very much forward to talking about a book that's impacted my life that will most likely be the best book I read in 2023. So, but there's still a couple months left.
Fantastic. Do you want to choose who goes next?
Going straight. Gail, you're up.
Gail Perry, just north of Indianapolis in Carmel, Indiana. We call it Carmel, not Carmel. I am really excited about this topic. Looking forward to, I've enjoyed what I've read of the book so far, really looking forward to this conversation. Oh, and Matthew.
Good morning, everyone. Matthew Hegum. I am tuning in from Custer, Washington, which is about 2 hours north of Seattle. And I am feeling a mix of things ranging from agitation and frustration to which I won't get into, and all the way up to, or maybe I will, all the way up to like excitement and joy, right? So just a container for many emotions. And with that, I pass to Deborah.
My name is Deborah Kilsheimer. I live in Port Orange, Florida, which is just south of Daytona Beach on the east coast of Florida. And I feel great right now. I always feel great. If you ever ask me how I am, I'm always great.
Great.
And let's go. Andrea, you're next.
So I'm Andrea Austin. I'm the lone Canadian in the moment, halfway between Toronto and Ottawa, located in a gorgeous little town called Combermere. I'd say I'm grateful just for being here today and getting a chance to connect in this way.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'll wrap us up. Hi, everyone. I'm Ingrid Edstrom, and I am currently located in the unceded ancestral lands of the Shasta and Takelma peoples in Southern Oregon, just outside of Ashland. And in this moment, I'm feeling really excited for this conversation, and also in that fascinating growth edge of seeing where so many of the things that this conversation is bringing up are alive for me in some of the work that I'm doing in the world. And yeah, confronting myself and others with our freedom and asking myself big questions around, okay, so what's my freedom in this moment? What does that look like? And how do I be accountable to my freedoms? So super, super excited for where this conversation is going to go. And with that, I know, Ed, your brain is probably just exploding with so many of the fantastic things that you've been eager to share, particularly around your conversation with the authors. So if you want to dive in, I would love for you to kick us off.
Well, let's talk about the title first, Confronting Our Freedom. And it's actually one of a quote that I often use from the Peters, as I like to refer to them, because Peter Block is the author of the book. Of course, Peter Koestenbaum is oft quoted in the book. And they did work together for some time. Peter Koestenbaum, by the way, is still alive. He's 98 years old. God bless him. And but this notion of leadership, this is my favorite definition of leadership. Leadership is about confronting people with their freedom. So react to that. Yeah. Well, I want you to think what it means. Confronting people with their freedom. What does that mean? What does that mean to do? What would it mean to do that? To confront someone with their freedom?
Well, to me, it means they have a choice in how they live. I mean, if you tell me to, in fact, I had this morning, client calls up and tells me what he's going to pay me. I said, doesn't work like that. I tell you, then we don't have to work together. So to me, that was my freedom to say to him, this is how I work. You can pay what you want to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's his
So
freedom.
I think it's all about, we make our own choices. So if you work for somebody, you don't have to put up with that boss. I mean, you know, I love Ron one time said, every day someone comes to your job, it's their choice to show up.
Mm-hmm.
This is not we don't have slavery anymore. And, you know, they choose to show up or not. And so I'm always grateful that they do. So to me, that's what that means.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would love to respond with a little bit of a story.
Mm-hmm.
So the first time I heard that idea was sitting on a plane, and I tuned in to a webinar that you were giving, Ed, on busting the top 10 myths of business, one of which was that about leadership being about changing someone else's behavior. And shifting that into leadership is confronting others with their freedom. And I had just had a terrible experience with an intern who was dead set on putting me into the role in her life of her power over slave master, when that is not the culture of the workplace that I had. Not at that time, not ever. And she wasn't interested in following through those kinds of things. It's like, why did you sign up for this internship? And it exploded in like the most horrific ways, where she was like accusing me of being abusive and all these other things.
You?
Yep. And I had the opportunity to reflect as you were talking about what would it mean to confront someone with their freedom of, oh, my freedom would have been to say, hey, there's the door a month ago. Why didn't I do that? I could have confronted her with her freedom of, hey, you're not following through. Is this what you really want to be doing? And I'm not interested in the excuses. There's the door. You're an intern. Like, what? Why are you here? What's going on? And it was a huge learning experience for me. And other opportunities since then, like this is the biggest life lesson that keeps showing up. Spending 21 years with a guy who felt ambiguous about me and treated me like, you know, his gilded cage, essentially. It's like, no, if you're not going to treat me right, there's the door. And why am I putting up with this? Our freedom is either rowing together in the same direction or it's not effective. So how do we make these conversations more human, more humane, and more consent-based? And in order for them to be consent-based, people have to have an idea of what they want. What is their freedom? So it really comes into this know thyself place that as leaders, hopefully we can learn to coach people to step into their own leadership, set aside the power over zero-sum game mentality, and create win-wins in every conversation. So that's kind of what it's meant to me. And I have to thank you, Ed, because I remember the moment where it's like my brain exploded and everything changed.
Yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum, isn't it? Right? Because what we seek from people is for them to choose their freedom. They need to choose their freedom, because we can't impose freedom on them, because then it's not choice, right? So it's a little bit of a conundrum. So. And of course, one of the things that Peter mentions early in the book, and it's actually quoted a couple of times, is the Koestenbaum idea that the cost of your freedom is anxiety. And then he says, I love this is not a great value proposition. Yeah, which is right dead on. It's like, no, if I actually choose to be free, that's going to create anxiety for me. I can't now avoid anxiety because I've made a choice to be free. The lack of freedom, if I don't choose freedom, I can relieve myself of anxiety because it's always someone else's fault. It's always an imposition from the outside. It's always the man putting me down or whatever it is, right? You know, it's whatever the outside thing is that it has control over me, and you're just choosing to allow that to continue to happen until you recognize, okay, I have to choose it for myself. And here's the thing, you can't make others do it. All you can do is emulate it, be near them, be present for them, and hope that they get it, right? The other quote, which is not in the book, and this is from another author, and perhaps maybe this would be another future, it would be a great book to read through. The colossal misunderstanding of our time is the assumption that insight will work with people who are unmotivated to change. So we have this need to absolutely believe if I just say the one thing, if I just give them the nugget, they'll go, oh, right, got it now.
Who's that author?
That's Edwin Friedman. The book is called A Failure of Nerve. And Leadership in the Age of the Quick Fix is the subtitle, by the way. And he, that's always been a great way for me to think about that, because we can't force it on anyone. They have to choose. And here's a great example of it. I have a 17-year-old son now who's looking at colleges, right? I'm not going to, and this is a point of contention between me and my wife. There's nothing that we can say to him that goes, oh, okay, right, I'm going to do all my stuff and get my shit together for applying to colleges on, doing all that stuff, right? There's nothing we can. Would you like help? All right.
Yeah. Did I get the quote right? I typed up, I think, a paraphrase of what you said in the chat. The colossal misunderstanding is that
of our time is the assumption that insight will work with people who are unmotivated to change.
And you said Edwin Friedman?
Edwin Friedman, Friedman, Friedman.
Okay.
Edwin Friedman. Yeah, and I can get you that. But yeah. Anyway, well, what else?
I would love to do a quick check. I'm curious, who got the chance? I know that for some of us, the book club was kind of a last minute thing, and that, I talked with Deborah yesterday. She's like, I'll get the book. I'm not going to have the chance to read it by tomorrow. So has anybody else gotten the chance to read the prologue and introduction? Gail has. Beautiful. I'm really, go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, listened to. I began my first pass with the audiobook. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'm curious, how did it feel to you, this idea of the cost of freedom being anxiety? Does that ring true for you? Where are you with some of the thoughts, the assertions that he's making in that first chunk?
I think it's a good reminder of philosophy I've pretty much held for a long time. What I really love about what I've read so far of this book, which is just the prologue and the intro, is that it's very focused on the workplace. And I think so much of our lives revolves around, I think a lot of people feel they have a lot of choice in their personal lives and not choice in the workplace. And whether they're the new hire or the seasoned manager or the owner of the company, the choices are there for all levels of employment or work, whatever. But I do think there's an awful lot of finger pointing, or it's, I'm not happy because of something else that's going on that I don't have any control over. And no matter what level of work you're at, I think that people don't step back enough and look at where they are and how they chose to get there and what choices they make by going into work every day, and what they share and what they do and how they behave and how they treat others and the expectations they have of others, which they may, or more likely may not have the right to impose. I'm really fascinated to get into it more. I'm looking forward to the rest of the book in a big way, but haven't gotten in past this intro, but I'm really excited having read just the introductory material.
Which is long, by the way. I mean, it's almost a third of the book.
I would love to dig in just a little deeper with you, Gail. So when it comes to that workplace focus, how do we get people on board with these conversations, given that the colossal misunderstanding of our time is the assumption that insight will work with people who are unmotivated to change?
Let me object to the phrasing of your question.
Okay.
We don't get them to do anything.
Right. Okay. So how do we create an environment? That's what I'm trying to figure out. How do we cultivate the environment that we want to be in? How do we create the culture of accountability?
I think society has done a pretty good, I wouldn't say good, but done a pretty effective job of making it clear how people should be, how somebody thinks people should behave in the workplace, whether it was the beginning of the industrial era and when workplaces were set up to be an evolution of the coal mines, and people were still given specific jobs on the line. This is what you're going to do. You don't have any choice, but we're going to pay you and give you your benefits. And it seemed like a fair exchange. And so that evolved for a long time. And right now there's a very strong feel-good movement in society that employers need to be more responsible for the well-being and the happiness of their staff, and making sure people are getting what they need, whereas it's really not the employer's role in either of those cases to impose or to make decisions on behalf of these people. I mean, I think if you're the employer, you're going to argue that this is my company. I would like to hire people to do specific things. I will hire you to do this thing that I need, but that's what I need. If you don't want to do that, you don't need to work with me. Sort of like the situation you had with your intern who wasn't delivering what you expected, and you had every right to decide what you were going to expect by bringing someone into your sphere. But that employee also had the opportunity to say, no, I don't want this, and walk away. We seem to focus a lot, I think, on the employers and what they should be doing to make the majority of people who are employees content. I'm not sure that's, I think that's a direction our society has taken, and it'll certainly evolve into something else at some point. But it annoys me that it even exists.
But it gets down to that choice, right? It gets down to that choice and look, after the quote about misunderstanding of our time and insight, Friedman goes on to say, so what do we do? If that's the case, what do we do? And he's like, well, there's two choices. If you desire to maintain this relationship, stay and work on yourself. If you don't, exit the relationship. Yeah. And I think that I take that's with customers, that's with friends, that's with spousal units. So it's like, that's how it works. Is like, okay, this is where we choice. And I also love this. Let me warn you that if you argue with me, I will take your side.
I love that quote too. Right. Exactly, because with you, the ubiquitous, you have the right to be upset with the situation. And that doesn't mean you can change me and how I'm going to treat you as the employer, but it certainly means you have every right to not be here if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the other choice, by the way, is to not choose freedom, is to choose slavery.
Right. And slavery is a pretty nasty term, but it's got a lot of stigma attached to it. But But at the same time, a lot of people want to be told what to do. A lot of people just want the paycheck and don't want to care about any sort of self-evolvement and improvement while they're on their job. They're happy to work that line, or, whatever the, fast food, cash register, whatever the job is. I think a lot of people see that as a good option. I don't have to use my brain. I can do this job. I can get a paycheck. I can go home and then have my life and enjoy it. And, and
that's great.
That's what keeps so many businesses running, is because a lot of people feel that way, and it's great.
So long as they're aware of it and actively choosing that and not blaming everyone else around them for what they're creating, if that's making them happy, wonderful. Let's just be open to hear about it.
Yeah.
I would love to draw attention to what Matthew was posting in the chat. Matthew, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. For those of you who are not in the chat that's watching the video, I said, on one hand, I understand the idea, right, of this whole piece about like the cost of freedom is anxiety, because, when you finally start making choices for yourself, particularly as somebody who has had difficulty with that, because of some past issues, you start to realize that you have to make choices you've never made before, and then you get put into a biological state of the unknown, and so all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, I have a choice and I can choose, wait, what? And then it creates this anxiety, and I think it's frankly biological, because it triggers that sort of part of your brain that's like, oh, this is an unknown space, I don't have a tool for this, what do I do? Oh my god, what's going to happen, right? And then it starts to kind of put you into a state of anxiety and stress around not knowing what's going to happen. I think, yeah, there is something nice, Gail, about being told what to do and when to show up, because that part of your brain can chill out and not worry about having to figure things out for yourself, right? But I think on the other hand, for me, it's this curiosity around, why does there have to be a cost for our freedom? And of all things, anxiety, because anxiety, for some people, I know myself included, has in its worst case been extreme biological reactions like panic attacks, right? And so why would I choose to throw myself into a state of convulsion, right, and fear in my body versus freedom? Why does that have to be the cost there, right? And I had the opportunity last night to watch to go to a play, and it was Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And for those of you who don't know that play, the long and short of it is that Hedwig gives up a part of who she is in order to escape her home environment and to move to America, right? And it's particularly a particularly significant cost to bear, right? And the thing that happens in that moment where she's sitting between the man who she's going to marry and has to go through a sex change in order to escape the country and do the thing, and her mother, the guy says to the mother, oh, isn't it right? Isn't this the right thing to do? And the mother says, to be free, one must give up a part of oneself, right? And it's that idea of wait, so I have to actually sacrifice something for my freedom? And I'm not, that's where I'm not aligned with, I think, the idea around it.
This is Matthew. I want to ask you: is it a sacrifice if it's truly what you want, though? I mean, the sacrifice can be a loaded word too. It's
yes, and then that brings me to my second comment around how systems of oppression work inside, how people operate inside of systems of oppression. Because in this example, and others, I think I could think of other examples as well, but in this example, it's which is the lesser of two evils, right? Do I stay here in this communist space in an oppressive culture where I could be harmed, or do I go this direction and I might sacrifice in this example my biology or my gender identity as it is, but at least I'll get out of this, right? And it looks a little better. So it's it's like what it is a curiosity for me when freedom is housed inside of a system.
Yeah, I mean, Viktor Frankl, of course, a famous quote from him, and the crux of his book, Man's Search for Meaning, talks about, look, the Nazis took everything away from us. They took our possessions, they took our hair, they took the teeth out of our body for the gold fillings that were in them. They literally took our freedom, everything. But there was one thing that they couldn't take away from us, and that is our ability to feel about the situation the way we felt about the situation. Right. And it's the last, he calls it the last of the human freedoms, the ability to feel how one feels in any particular situation. You still own that. He says some of us chose to commit suicide and go run toward the exit knowing that we were going to be shot. That all of those things becoming a choice. But the last of the human freedoms is the ability to own the way that we feel and think about our particular situation. And that cannot be taken away from us.
I would love to reframe that just a little bit, because the word that Frankl actually uses is attitude, not feel. Because our emotions and our bodies are largely chemical and are triggered by automatic responses in our systems. And so we don't always get to choose the way that we feel, not in every single moment. However, we can always choose our attitude, which can influence our feelings in the long run, whether to have a positive attitude that supports the decisions and to work within the circumstances and even the emotional sludge that we are swimming in. I mean, some people are swimming in chemical depression. There's a lot of factors. We can always choose our attitude, though.
And look, I want to be clear, is like there's also times when that as you mentioned, that control is lost in the sea of chemicals, right? That can and does happen. So that I think what we're trying to do is let's point to our. There's a big difference between what Viktor Frankl was experiencing and what we're experiencing when we go into a customer situation. Generally, nobody gets shot.
Generally, yeah. And also, I want to point out, comparison is the thief of joy, and also the thief of validation.
Yeah.
Those customer situations on the day-to-day can be very emotionally impactful, and for some people even traumatic, depending on the customer situation, depending on our family situation, depending on any traumas that maybe were experienced by us as children, things that we're carrying into those situations. That each of our experiences is valid and needs to be taken into account, and acknowledging that it's okay that we're having a hard time with this. This is big stuff.
Yeah. And wait till you get to the end of the book, because spoiler alert, it's all because we don't want to die.
I'm really, really looking forward to getting into some juicy conversations around power dynamics and how those show up in the accounting
back
industry.
to last week's conversation about death is optional.
Yeah. No optional death. That's it.
Wait.
So if it's okay, I'm just going to weigh in for a moment.
Yeah, please.
It's funny because I hear, I get it. I love this approach, right, to choice and independence and freedom. I 100% align with it. However, a number of comments have been made, including we're not living in slave times or we're not doing this. And the truth is that's not true for everyone, right? There's still a lot of, I'm going to call it consciousness, right? Patterns playing out in what we perceive as freedom. And so we can be living, right, in one of the most abundant environments that we've ever lived in, and our psyche does not realize it. We're still running those patterns deep inside. And so it doesn't matter the simplest of situations to the extreme, right? It's just that often we don't even recognize we have choice because we're still neurologically, psychologically, however you want to describe it, still running those patterns. And so it was intriguing to me because the one thing, and I haven't read, I got to page 17, that was impressive. because it's highly intellectual.
It's dense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really dense, I don't mean not dense, but it's a heavier book, but I caught the essence. And I haven't read far enough yet to know what the position is. But what seems to be missing so far, and maybe it'll change, is compassion. I totally understand the shift. I'm mucho excited, right? I can see the dynamics that have played out in organizations, the disempowerment, all that kind of stuff. So I was super excited to see it. But I didn't feel that there was an awareness so far in the compassion and understanding of how we've actually gotten here. And then how do we bridge and open those doors so that people do realize that they have choice? Because a lot of the times we don't. And so that's what's really standing out for me right now and present in this conversation, because it was barbling up inside of me right as I was reading it. Because even the word confronting, in all honesty, pissed me off, because confrontation to me has a very interesting, powerful energy that sometimes is needed. Okay. Like sometimes we get a slap upside the head when we need to hear something, right? So I'm being funny at the same time, but I know to my core that often we don't know we have choice, even though we're living in the perceived environments of some of the most free countries in the land. And many of us are still running slave programming and don't even know it. And so that's what really stood out for me. And so this cost concept I get, I don't think there's a cost. I think there's an opportunity, a huge opportunity, just to show and begin to show people that they have choice. My language would be through love, to nurture those environments, right? So that others then choose exactly what the book is talking about. Because I'm not in denial of what it's saying, but the approach is right now is really present for me.
I did a quick search, Andrea, and the word compassion is first used on page 33. So
I love it. See, I haven't gotten to 33 yet. Okay, so
I'm not going to spoil it for you. But there's an interesting context. I'll just leave it at that. He does say this, and this is early on. But he says, and I like this construct too: is freedom is a choice. Liberty is the absence of coercion. He makes that distinction between those two things. Freedom is a choice, but liberty is the absence of coercion. And by the way, I'm thrilled, Andrea, that you used the word compassion and not empathy.
Oh yeah, no, they're different.
Yeah, I am not. Because the empathy, the way it's originally constructed, it came out of the Gestalt philosophy of 1930s Germany, which, a lot of things there. But it was this notion of that I feel the same pain as the person. I feel I am empathetic, means I have the same feeling of pain that you do. In fact, wasn't it Deanna Troi on the show Star Trek: The Next Generation? She was called an empath, as I recall, where she literally felt the pain and suffering when things would happen externally. I think for human beings, that could be relatively destructive, because now all we have is two people in pain. What I want is exactly what you said, is compassion. I want someone to be present for me and with me, with suffering. Compassion is with pathos, with suffering, and be near to me. And my famous example that I love, because everybody knows the story of somebody who got this, is Captain Sullenberger, who was the guy who landed the plane in the Hudson, right? Katie Couric, there's an interview, you can watch it on 60 Minutes. She says, "Captain Sullenberger, did you pray?" And he says, "No, ma'am. There were 147 people behind me taking care of that." He goes, "My job," and I love this phrase, "my job was to successfully crash the aircraft." Successfully crash. Because it wasn't a landing. Right? And I think about that. So what is it in our businesses? What it is in our lives? that we need to successfully crash? What is it that we're keeping aloft? And the energy that we're keeping that in the air, and is not going to stay in the air. We know it's coming down. Well, what can we do to successfully crash that? So
and
that
what opportunities can rise out of those challenges? To a
that's
certain
right.
extent, it's almost like a midwifery, because
Mhm.
when something like that ends, the change creates something new, and we don't know what that something new is. The future is uncertain. And yeah, I love what
Hence, we're anxious about it, just to loop that back in.
I want to dig into that in just a moment, but I first want to just express gratitude for everything that you shared, Andrea. And I totally agree with you that compassion is what is needed, and also hear the discomfort with the word confronting. And one thing that really helped me with that is several years ago at a Scaling New Heights conference, Joe Woodard redefined confrontation for me in a way that changed my life. He said that confrontation is a positive interaction with a momentary negative emotional response. Confrontation is a positive interaction with a momentary negative emotional response. Now, depending on whom we are having the confrontation with, that negative emotional response can last a very varying degree amount of time. But the word confront literally means to face with. We are facing something with someone. And the question is, are we actually doing it with them, with compassion? How we choose to go about confrontation dramatically changes what that confrontation is going to look like. Confrontation does not imply argument. It's acknowledging, oh, hey, there's going to be a momentary negative emotional response here. Can we do that together in a healthy, effective way that takes care of each other? That's where the compassion comes in. And I would suggest, that assumption that insight will work with people who are unmotivated to change, insight won't. Compassion might. And I feel like that's a big part of what we're digging into here. I got to take a class a couple months ago on deep canvassing, which is a beautiful strategy being employed by movement leaders to dig in deep listening conversations with people who are on the other side of issues to find out what's going on there. Like, why would you not want people of the same gender or whatever gender to be able to get married? What does that have to do with you? I'm genuinely curious. Please tell me. And they've found that after listening deeply to the experience of the people who were voting against that, most of them were open to changing the way that they were voting, that they just needed to be heard, that there was some kind of hurt people limiting belief that was bringing up an emotional response in them that needed to be released. And once it was released, they were like, okay, I'm ready to have this conversation in a more effective way. So that compassion, the leading with listening, is huge. And I really thank you for bringing that to the table.
I just didn't get to page 33 yet.
No. I've read the quote. You may not be happy with the construction around compassion in there either. So I'm not going to get there for you. It's all right. Yeah. No. I'm just trying to find this other quote that I came across that I think is can't find it anyway. So let me just share with you another thing that Peter said during the interview that I think ties this together. He says, let's say, if you wish for safety in an organization, he does specifically say in an organization, wishing for safety in an organization, that's an illusion. Because why not choose an illusion that better serves you? Like, pick a different illusion. Right? Because you can pick that. And if we're not, the deal has always been, or for, I think we've been taught, a lot of this comes out of business schools, is that, hey, we'll keep you safe here in an organization. We'll take care of you. I just don't think that that's a good thing overall from a business perspective, to think that a business needs to take care of me. This is something I want to get from the group. I'm a person of faith. I attend church. I have lots of outside influences and have opportunities to donate charitably, do charitable work within my community. There's a big push inside Sage. We have our, that we must do charitable work inside the organization, and it's an attempt, I think, to replace, for many people who don't have it, the sense of belonging and inside a community. And while I don't object to it, what I don't like is the feeling of imposition on me. Like, not only do you have to do what you do outside your organization, but you've got to do stuff where you represent Sage as well.
Do you think that Sage is trying to give you all this great feeling of being helpful, or is it just that Sage wants to be known as an organization that provides help?
And that's a big question, right? Is it ultimately just marketing? And we get to, is that what this boils down to? And here's my fear, and it goes back to, you probably have heard this quote from David Foster Wallace in the commencement speech that he gave to, I think, the University of Michigan. He says, everyone worships. Everyone worships. He says, but be careful about what you worship, right? Because if you worship money, if you worship material things, it's going to eat you alive from the inside out, right? So and I'm probably not articulating this well. And again, I'm not resentful. It's just, it's to me, it's in a slightly inappropriate nature for my business to be telling me, when you do good, you've got to do it in the name of Sage too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. That's
No, it makes total sense. I actually was part of a significant organization that I'll go nameless in a moment, years ago, and there was an entire initiative around what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. And
I could understand intellectually, right, what it is that they were trying to do. I might be naive. I didn't feel like it was a marketing ploy. I really do feel like they were trying to create a sense of community, give back to society, right? But I could also see the pushback, right, of the employees being told what to do. And so to me, this goes to the essence of what the book is bringing forth, right? Is it's not from a place of freedom, right? It doesn't mean that you can't create an environment where maybe that's nurtured, right? But you have to give people choice. And there was no choice, none. You either, bucket, like you got to maybe choose where you put that energy, right? But there was still no choice. And I could see the resistance, right? Because people were, in your case, right, and in many cases, doing other things already in their own lives that aligned with who they were. And so I could see the misalignment and the pushback within the organization. And I can guarantee you it didn't succeed. So
but it does seem reasonable to me that the organizers of this within the organization, within the company, Sage, whatever company, have every right to want to do this and to impose it on staff, especially if they make it clear when you take a job that part of your job is going to be, you have to participate in this thing that we've created, and you don't have to take the job.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I'm not coerced in any way to do it by Sage. It's not a forced thing at all. It is, but there is an underlying milieu of the whole thing that this is this is about what this collective we are doing, and again, no problem with that. And people want to participate. That's great, but it's just there's a tension there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what if they start supporting things you don't agree with?
Well, that's another thing. So, here's the thing. It's been overall mostly stuff that, hey, we're pitching in at local community shelters, but there's nothing that you're like, okay, we're going to decide. But I think in some companies, that's a very real possibility, right? That that we're going down a path that is not in alignment with some people in the organization. And that's a huge challenge.
I know, like Hobby Lobby. I won't shop at Hobby Lobby, or I would never work there
Mm-hmm.
because of how same thing with Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they certainly have the right to think how they want, but then I have the right to not support them.
Yep,
Sure.
of course.
And if I work for an employer that all of a sudden came out with this, all of a sudden we're anti-LGBTQ and we're blah, 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 blah. I'm thinking, okay, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Now,
why
why
is
is
the
the company
freedom that,
doing this? I think it's because they, every company has a profit motive to make money. Is this helping them make money? I mean, I think it puts a feel good thing out there, makes people feel good, but I don't like to be coerced, even though, oh, we're not making you. Yeah, but if I don't do it, what happens?
well, there's the anxiety.
Yeah,
Whether
the
I agree or
anxiety.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I give you my 8 hours and, I got hired for a job and now you want me to take my weekends too? Or
Another reason to make it clear when you hire someone what the
right.
total expectations are.
Mhm.
Right, but that doesn't usually happen in the beginning. It usually happens when, how long did they didn't start this at the beginning, Ed, when you worked at Sage. This is a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden everybody goes, well, I can't walk away from my job. I'm getting paid a lot of money. I enjoy my job,
But
so
they can.
the new people that could come in, okay, but the old people, do they not, do they get an opt-out? So, I mean, why do it?
Yeah. No, as I said, it's not in Sage. It's not. I have not perceived it to be coercive in any way. So, which is good, because that would take it to a whole nother level. But it's just as interesting to me, and maybe it's just because I do have some of these outside places for me to go with it that I don't feel the need, right? And it's because I've got other outlets for this. There's places in my community where I want to plug myself in, and that's where I do it. I'm not going to not continue to do that. So,
I think a better way for a company would be, okay, I'm going to take some of my profits as a board member or an executive suite, and I'm going to take some of the profits and invest it into somebody, where instead of having to make the staff or the people that work for me go volunteer their time to support a cause they believe in. Take the money that I help you earn and then put it into a cause you want, like the United Way or whatever you want, So
There are lots of ways to do that. Side note, I used to work for an accounting firm where we were told you've got a week, a year, 5 days of business time. If you want, you can take off and do something that will benefit society, an organization you believe in, whatever you want. It's your call. Do what you want. We will pay you for a week. It doesn't count against your vacation. We want to encourage you to support whatever cause is important to you, and we will encourage you in this way by giving you the time off if you want it. And end of sentence. No restrictions on what we did, where we did it, when we did it, anything. It was great. And it was for total choice. You didn't have to do it at all. But if you want to do that, if you want to use some of your work time to do something.
Well, what would stop me from saying, because I'm the cynical one. All right, I'm going to support my family for a week by taking them on vacation.
Yeah, well, it was.
There's only approved things they're going to let you go help.
I guess I would say the restriction was they would pay you if it were. I don't remember if
they agreed with it.
See, that organization.
Yeah.
So where's my freedom in that?
It was total freedom. You didn't have to do it.
Right.
So you could just work another week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I'm cognizant of our time here. I know we have about a half hour scheduled, and we're a little bit astray from the book. That's okay.
We've got some good stuff going on. I would love to kind of bring it back to the book a little bit with an idea, unless you had one that you were about to talk about.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So we were just talking about these ideas of volunteering within our workplaces, and that was started by this idea of safety in the workplace, which you brought up, Ed. And I'd love to dig into that idea of safety versus anxiety a little bit more, particularly around, I had an amazing experience just this last year where I found myself in a really challenging situation where that sent me into total panic. And hindsight, looking at the way that my body responded, that my automatic emotions responded from being in a very triggering, hard, challenging situation, my brain kept repeating, not safe, not safe, not safe, not safe. And, in that panic response place, afterwards, I had the amazing opportunity, thanks to synchronicity of this is how things go in my life, of meeting Marianne Williamson and getting to have a conversation with Marianne Williamson. And one of the things that she was talking to this group of women that I was in about was this idea around our preciousness. That's what she said, our preciousness around being safe. And she kind of challenged us that this idea of safety is not serving us. Because if the question that we're asking ourselves in our minds is, am I safe or not safe? It's a yes, no, that is basically a hair trigger clue of whether or not our panic responses are going to just toss our prefrontal cortex out the window and pop our lid off. Like, hey, look, I'm emotionally flooded because I've decided that I'm not safe. Whereas if we stop clinging to this idea of safe or not safe being what we're looking for, and instead try to step into brave space, we can expand our stretch zone and make it so that we don't panic as easily. And that's where I wanted to kind of bring this idea back around to anxiety of, in the things that I've been learning over the last few years, and particularly in the work that I've been doing in my certification with positive intelligence with Shirzad Shamin. I don't know that I quite agree with the word anxiety, that anxiety is the cost of freedom, because anxiety is an emotional state. I would say that uncertainty is the cost of freedom, and how we emotionally respond with the attitude which we face that uncertainty is what Frankl was getting into. And so, and thinking about, I think Simon Sinek's talked about this. I've also seen a Will Smith video talking about this, that fear and excitement are actually the same emotion. It's the same chemical compound running through our bodies. It's simply a question of what attitude we choose to face that emotional rush with, that will determine how we're able to step into that opportunity or see it as a challenge. So I'm really curious how the anxiety piece shows up for each of you, and what freedom ends up feeling like for you, because it's changed for me in the last couple of years.
Well, first of all, on this, and I've got to ponder your notion of anxiety versus uncertainty. Got to think about that more. So thank you for that. I'm going to process that through. but let's say, in a way, we all experienced it because it was a good thing. Our ancestors, when they were walking through the forest or whatever, if you heard the leaves rustling, and you were like, oh, that's just the wind. Well, that's probably fine because 90% of the time it wasn't. But the one time it was the tiger. And oh, by the way, your genes didn't get passed down then. So the genes that did get passed down were the ones that said, oh, there's rustling in the bush. I better check. I better be cautious. That did get passed down because they didn't die. Right. So in a way that's coming through and channeling through us. But I have to say that for me, freedom has been more and more about discretionary time. And maybe it's just an illusion of doing the things that I want to do. And I know this is, potentially going to be broadcast. So, but I get a lot of people who ask me, Ed, why are you still at Sage? And my answer is because Sage gives me the freedom to do what I want to do. Right. like this. I mean, I'm probably one of the few people at Sage who doesn't have to go through a level of paperwork to do something like this. Right.
And they trust you.
That's
You
why I
earned
work
them.
for myself, is that I get to do what I want to do when I want to do it. That's why I work for myself. I mean, having to go work for somebody else and, I don't want to do that. I like to wake up in the morning and make the decision what I'm going to do today. Today, I woke up, went to my Pilates class, went garage sailing, went out to lunch. Now I'm going to go to a client this afternoon after this meeting ends, a new client, get started with that. Now, am I anxious about that? Yes, because it's new. I don't know what I'm going to come across. But I think, so the choice between anxiety and safety is I'm willing to be anxious going into an unknown situation. I kind of know it, but it's new. Or do I want to be safe? If I'm safe, I don't grow. That's why I look at these helicopter moms right now, that their kids cannot do anything without them, with the fence around them. I'm thinking these kids will never grow up to learn. I'm 12 years older than my sister, and my mom was a helicopter mom to my sister. My sister is afraid of her own shadow because my mom took care of everything. I was the oldest. Go out and play in the dirt, Debbie. Eat dirt. It didn't kill me. It made me tough. Gretchen, my sister, hope she doesn't watch this. She's always, that might, something might happen to me. And I remember when she was deciding to move to Florida, which was a while ago now. But what if I get there and I don't like it? I said, you can move back.
You're not a tree.
You can move back. Yeah. And she goes, what, who will I know? I said, you'll meet people. I mean, I moved to Florida from Pennsylvania by getting in the car and driving and stopping because I ran out of gas in Orlando. And I thought, I'll stay here, but my sister had she was afraid, but I said, Gretchen, I'm there. I can help you. But I threw her in the pool, but I think, but she's anxious. I'd rather be anxious than safe. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go walk down, a bad area of a town to risk that. I don't go into ATMs. I don't get ATM money out in the middle of the night. I mean, there's certain things you just avoid. But
you avoid the alligators in Florida too.
Exactly. But I mean, safety. I don't. Choosing safety is risky to me because then you're always safe. You never leave your house. It's risky for me to get in the car and drive to where I'm going every day. I risk everything. I'm risking safety by not staying home. I risked my livelihood by quitting jobs and starting my own business. I Facebook post the other day, well, how much are you making working for yourself? And I said, when I started, I was making $0. But I was willing, I wanted to be happy more than I wanted to make $10 million working for somebody else. You choose. I chose not being safe, which has paid off for me.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Andrea checked out in the chat saying thank you for starting the conversation today. Grateful. And thank you, Andrea, if you're catching the rest on the replay for your additions today. And thanks to everyone who's watching on the replay. And we love to hear your comments in the chat and things like that. So please keep this conversation rolling, and acknowledging that we've got about 25 minutes before we wrap up. Where do we want to take the conversation from here? What other big mind-blowing ideas from the book or, related ideas that the book is bringing up do we want to make sure that we cover today? Recognizing that there's going to be even more mind-blowing ideas brought up next time.
I want to just talk about this, and this is one of the few listicles in the book. He talks about the insights that will add to the shift, the mind shift. But he says, and we talked a little bit about this already, accountability cannot be imposed or demanded. It occurs as an inevitable growth of freedom. For we account for what we choose and what we claim as our own agency in making things work. And this is I think the operative quote, the soundbite, so to speak. People do not resist change. They resist coercion.
Yeah, I loved that. I highlighted that quote as well.
Mm-hmm. They don't resist change, they resist coercion. And sadly, too often in business, it's a lot of, what accountability means. Subtext is, how do we get them to do what we want them to do?
Well, I always think of a leader should be inspirational, meaning you have to want to get people to buy into your vision of why you started the business, how you, to me, and you lead by example. I mean, bossing people around, you better do this, you do it like this. I mean, that does not, people will do it because they have to get the paycheck on Friday. But I think the first chance they might have to say, you know what, that guy over there, they treat me better, they'll leave. As much as I don't think people work for money. As money is important, because I think if people worked for money, they'd all be drug dealers or dancing a topless bar. They work because they want to go to work every day at a place that appreciates them, where they can make a difference. So how can I want them to want to come to work to make a difference? Is that by watching all their key logging strokes, reading all their email, being really controlling of them, or being inspirational so they'll want to do their best? Like how much I love you and Ron. How you say, a lot of times being in this accounting profession, we want to track every single minute that they work. What's the yield? What's the, the whatever that big word is. And like the girl that works for me, she does not track her time. And people go, aren't you nuts? How do you know she's working? Because the work's getting done. I mean, I told her, I said, look, I'm paying you $1,000 a week. And if you get all the work done the first 3 days of the month, you will still get paid. So because I think, what am I paying for? Her butt in the chair? Or the result of what she does?
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm paying for. So she wants to do a good job for me, because where's she going to find a job like this, making 52 grand, and she gets to choose when to work? Now, and Hal goes, that's a pretty good job for a part-time job. I go, yes.
So I want to take this and especially this part, because the people don't resist change, they resist coercion. And not necessarily within the organizations that you're working, but the organizations, when you're bringing this message of Peter Block and people don't resist change, they resist coercion, to your customers' organizations, which is where you probably see a ton of what's the word I'm searching for? Well, it's anxious thinking, but anyway, bad stuff happening. There's a word. It's not coming to me.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. It's a good word. Toxicity, where you see toxicity in the organizations that you serve. And what is it that we as individual consultants who consult with these people, what is it that we can do to perhaps bring a lower level of anxiety, of freedom, of choosing accountability to them? How do we go about doing that?
I think that's a real hard ask, because, I think you have people, like, there are restaurants in town, and I'm sure where you all live, that say, we cannot find help. We cannot find help. There's a restaurant here that says, our staff walked out today. I mean, they have posted on Facebook like 3 or 4 times. I look at it and everybody says, oh, people don't want to work anymore. Horse manure. That boss stinks. Because, because I do a lot of restaurants, and they don't have turning staff, because those owners know that the restaurants are dependent on the servers that are there. And I always tell all my restaurants, I say, look, you could have the best food in the world, but if your service stinks, no one will come back. You could have bad food and good service, and you will have people lined up out the door. So, but that's a mindset of the owners. And that, they have to control it. And if I don't make them do it, and if I don't, I'm not on them all the time. And I always think they're stealing. And then it's kind of like they'll walk out the door. So
let me just loop something back in, Deborah. So you say you won't go to Chick-fil-A, which I understand. I totally get that. Would you hire someone who worked there, though?
If they had worked there
at Chick-fil-A?
Well, yes.
Maybe learn from that experience.
Right, because it's my pleasure. They got that down. I know I won't have to teach that.
Yeah, because I tell you what, the Chick-fil-A here in town, they're wrapped around the building because they know how to treat customers.
Right. Well, did you see there was one town in Georgia, I believe it was. This is completely absurd, but when they were organizing the COVID shots, they literally brought the manager from Chick-fil-A in.
Yeah. Right. Because they know how to treat customers.
Well, but he knew how to organize a line of cars.
I see them. They're lined up around the block, and I mean, and the Burger King next door is empty.
Yeah.
We have a Dunkin'
there are
Donuts
lots of
and a
reasons for
Starbucks
that.
next to each other. Dunkin' has nobody. Starbucks is wrapped around the block. What does Starbucks do better? They treat their customers better.
Right.
So if you want to have
they treat their employees better. Yeah.
So if you want to have a successful business, stop blaming the staff why you're not making any money. Look at one pointing finger at them, you got 3 pointing back at you.
Mm-hmm.
And so be inspirational, and instead of saying the tables need bussing, go bus a table yourself, Mr. Boss, so that you're willing to jump in and help. And I bet you all of a sudden the staff will look, stop. To me, it is such a simple thing. Treat people how you want to be treated. And when I see these businesses that are not keeping staff, that can't find staff, it's all everybody else's fault. It's all this government giveaway horse manure. People want to work. And, so don't tell me that. And of course, I get into these arguments all the time with people because I'm, they all think it's everybody else's fault. I don't.
Well, that's Gail, you had some.
I'm just going to say that at the end of the day, or even at the beginning of the day, it's still the owner's decision to be the asshole he is, or whatever kind of jerky boss he is. And if that's the kind of boss he wants to be, it is not our job to change him. It's his absolute right and to be that boss. And maybe his business will fail. Maybe he'll find employees who are happy to work under those circumstances, and more power to all of them. We don't have to support that business. I think a lot of energy is being spent on trying to complain about someone who we don't need to care about.
Yeah.
But that goes back to Ed's original question. How do you change? You see that, what do you tell them?
You said, Ed, how do you change? But you were saying that in the context of you're a consultant who've been brought in as a consultant to advise on the lack of success of a business, or how can we make this business better? And in that case, it's perfectly reasonable to say, well, this is what I'm seeing. This is why I feel you'd be more effective if you did things this way. And you're being paid for that advice, which is absolutely reasonable.
Well, and they always give me the reasons why it won't work. Well, that won't work because it's never done like that in the past. And I said, well,
you've done everything you've been paid to do, and they're entitled.
Then I take my big fat check and I want.
Yeah.
I want to throw, and this directly to you guys, because you guys work a lot on systems issue. But one of the things that Peter said during the interview, and it actually might have been the first interview we did with him, now that I think about it. But anyway, it was, if you want tomorrow to look like yesterday, implementation will get you there.
See, this is why, and I have to talk to Ed. I have to press pause, write it down, and now think for 10 minutes what you just said.
Right. But if you want tomorrow to look like yesterday, implementation will get you there. And I know he said this in the interview too. He said, I've also, when his consulting career, he was brought in and he would talk about this stuff, this philosophical stuff. And they were like, what are you doing talking about philosophy? And his response was, I thought you wanted change.
Yes.
I thought you wanted change.
Well, and going back to your original question, Ed, if we're consultants stepping into these situations and trying to create change, I think Deborah really hit the nail on the head. I thought it was funny in your original question. You had the get people to in the question, and I was like, oh, but that's exactly it. That's what we need to open up. Is if the issue is that people are unmotivated to change, how do we inspire them to want to change? And that gets right into what Deborah was talking about is, it's that inspiration and the compassion that Andrea was talking about, that we do those things by bringing our humanity to the table and by connecting with each other as human beings, and by digging into, what do you want? What would you like to see? And if somebody's like, I just want to do my work, I just want to, put my blinders on, tell me what to do. If what they're saying is, I want to be miserable and to blame you for all of the problems in my life, thank you for letting me know that. There's the door. This is me in my freedom saying, I don't want to work with you anymore if that's how you're going to treat me. And
I would
have that
circle
freedom.
that. I would circle that back on to me, this book is all about compassion. To me, that's what compassion is allowing you to feel the way you want to feel, to do what you want to do, to have the freedom to make your own choices. If that's not compassionate, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard you probably have heard it, but it's called the Safe Return Doubtful ad? Ernest Shackleton, who led an exploration to the South Pole. This is the ad. You can look this up, and I'm reading it off of a picture that's on. It says, men wanted, it was a long time ago, for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success.
Nice.
And he had thousands of people show up.
People will work very hard for recognition.
Right. But here's the thing is, like, wouldn't that be a challenging thing to do, if you needed to hire somebody, put out an ad and say, come work at a place where the work is its own reward. Flexible hours, but management keeps changing its mind.
Yeah.
We do that. But don't we do that as accountants? New app you got to learn.
But yeah. Constant changes in technology. You're never going to feel that you're in a place where you're like, now I got it. You're never going to feel that. Constant
changes in the tax code. You got to learn a whole new thing every year.
Right. Who would we attract? Right. Who would we attract?
People willing to change.
Safe return doubtful.
Yeah.
But that's where, as accountants, I think, we inspire people to, like, we do make it, like, again, like the negative part is nobody likes paying taxes. Everybody complains about their tax bill. So why do we do this? Why do people want to work as accountants? Because I do think we can help people plan their wealth, and make a change that way. So you're inspirational that way, and I always tell people that I don't like my tax bill. I said, well, how much more profit did you make last year? Oh, $1 million. Okay, here's my bill for $1 million. Pay that. You won't owe any tax. And they go, what?
Nice.
I go, I'm happy to pay the tax, but, I think people want to go to a place where they're inspired to work, that they want to go. But then you have the people that they're just negative Nellies.
Deborah, I think what you just said might debunk Edwin Friedman's idea, because that little bit of insight might work on people who are unmotivated to change. You have a gift for dropping these nuggets of insight in these strange, fascinating ways that it's like, okay, you just rewired my neural synapses.
I did.
Just that idea.
I go to a consultant job. I don't know, you do this. I walk in and go,
pay that, you want to pay tax. There's your freedom. Those are your choices.
I do it all
Deborah is
the
living personification of that scene in Moonstruck where Nicolas Cage goes, I love you. Whack, snap out of it. Oh my goodness. So, and I wanted to bring this lesson as we're approaching our last 10 minutes here, but I was inspired about this earlier, but I just wanted to share it now. We've been talking about this notion of connection and freedom and needing to make it be a choice. One of my favorite all-time lyrics from a Broadway show is from the musical Pippin. It's and I don't know if those of you are aware, but I minored in musical theater, and I had the opportunity to play Pippin in a regional production of it. And so I must have sung this line, I don't know, thousands of times when you count rehearsals and all this. But it's at the very end, after the stage is completely stripped bare. The leading player even says to the pianist, "Get your goddamn fingers off the piano," right? This is and almost total darkness except for the light that's around so that we can see at least something, and the exit signs blaring. But Pippin is there on stage and he sings this lyric that I never really understood until probably 2 decades later. He says, "I'm not a river or a giant bird that soars to the sea. And if I'm never tied to anything, I'll never be free. If I'm never tied to anything, I'll never be free." Because I have to make that choice to tie myself to something. Otherwise, I'm unbounded. And the analogy that I use is a kite and a string, right? The kite can only be free enough to fly the way it's supposed to fly if there's someone holding the string.
Nice thought.
You know?
It's fascinating. It's kind of like a one of those Zen koans a little bit of we are free in our choices to choose our attachments.
Mm-hmm.
And that line reminds me very much of an Indigo Girls song. At one point in the song Power of Two, she says, "The closer I'm bound in love to you, the closer I am to free." And it's just these brilliant ideas of we get to choose what our attachments are, and the choosing of those. There's also another fantastic song where she talks about aching with freedom. This just splitting us open, aching with freedom, and being in those places of, I would say that having experienced it recently, where there's such cathartic opening up of uncertainty and just the adventure of not knowing what's coming yet next, and being in total trust and surrender, that cracks us open in these existential moments of just connection with source. That sensation of aching with freedom, that is really, I think, kind of what it's all about. And oh yeah, go ahead.
Because Ingrid, that's what AI is never going to be able to do.
I'm curious.
I don't think that AI will ever ache to be free.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think silicon can do that.
Yeah. So for those of you watching the replay, and we're getting into the pre-show conversation, we were talking about artificial intelligence before everybody hopped on. And like, at what point, could artificial intelligence develop sapient consciousness? And I specify sapient, not sentient, because I feel like Turing used the wrong word there. Sapience, it's all mind. Artificial intelligence is all mind.
Right.
And at the same time, what is consciousness? How do we define consciousness? Because we're seeing how trees communicate with each other through mycelial networks. Just because we don't understand the language of another form of consciousness, and the fact that AI is built on language itself, the beginning, there was nothing but the word.
That's right. That's right. And what I think is going to, and I believe this to be true, forever and always distinguish us. And, then you get into singularities and merging of humans with technology. Well, let's leave that aside. But we can want, but we can also want about our wants, meaning we can actually even want to change what our wants are. We can say, I want this right now, but I shouldn't want this.
Like donuts.
Yeah, yeah, right. But I should stop with the donuts. I want a donut, but I can want about not wanting a donut.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a level that of achievement that maybe other species have it, but I think a dog can certainly indicate preference. I want the popcorn. Look at you. Look at the popcorn. Look at you. Look at the popcorn. Look at you. Look at right. But it can't. I don't think dogs can go, you know what? I really shouldn't want that popcorn. It's going to make me fat. I mean,
So I think we might end up needing to continue this train of thought in our next one. The idea that I'm about to toss out is probably going to take longer than the 4 minutes we have. But I would posit that so many of the wanting to change our wants are often based upon the internal chemical responses that our bodies become addicted to, which is in large part based upon the default mode network neural synapse patterns in our brains. That our ego, our sense of self, gets attached to the habits and patterns that we exhibit, and it becomes really challenging to change. And certain things like meditation and psychedelics have been demonstrated to offer an opportunity to lay down a fresh layer of snow on the sledding hill so that we're not continuing to go down the same neurosynaptic ruts again and again. And I would say that the wanting to change but having a hard time changing is our sense of self. Our default mode network has set up patterns in our minds, safe, unsafe, to demonstrate to us that stepping outside of what we consider our norms, our habits, could be life-ending. And so change feels life-threatening to us, and our sense of self is attached to it. So I'm going to toss it out there as potential food for thought for next time, because I don't know if we've got time to delve into it.
No, we certainly we don't. And just to be clear, so next time we're going to be talking about chapters 1 and 2, the power and structure of freedom and the potential of anxiety. So, Matthew, this might be a good thing for you to loop into. So, what is the potential for anxiety? Even that phrase is like, wait, what? Potential for anxiety. And one of the things that I think he'll talk about is that we can't avoid anxiety. We need to try to self-manage it, self-regulate it. So more on that next time. And I hope others of you who are watching this will join us next time. But I will say this, that I like the small group, and what we may do is if we get more, is break into groups and then for an hour and then come back. Because I think the small group conversation is really good.
Yeah.
Well, let's just not tell them the time next time. Then they'll
Right. Well, I know that we've had a nice little handful of people register. About half of them showed up today, and
that's normal, isn't
there
it?
will be some people coming some days and not other days, and we have the
But
breakout.
we can't be so inspirational. They'll all want to show up.
Yay.
I just put the Shackleton ad in the chat if you want to.
Yeah.
Oh,
good.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's so much
Nice.
fun.
I mean, next our homework should be come up with an accounting ad mimicking that.
Right.
Yeah, I've actually done that exercise, Deborah, where I've had people write a job ad with the Sate Return Doubtful framework in mind. Like, what would you write about your own company?
Yeah.
Authentically. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to try and change your mind about anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would love to wrap us up with just a really quick, brief aha moment, top takeaway, or even just one word feeling from each person. And
I'll start. I'm still processing, and I wrote down uncertainty versus anxiety. I'm going to revisit that topic. So.
Thank you.
I'm still thinking about the last line from Pippin and attaching yourself to something in order to be free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second that, Gail. I'm with
Me
you.
too. Third.
Wow. Pippin mic drop. And thank you for singing, Ed. I'm just going to end with, I'm so grateful to each of you for coming today and for this delicious conversation. This is exactly what I was hoping we could create together. So thank you. Thank you. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Cool.
All right.
Great.
Bye.
Peace and courage.
Bye.